Hello, and welcome to another quarantine episode of the film production podcast, guys. We're doing the producers today, which is obviously a massively important part of film within this industry. And we're going to find out all about it. It's going to be great. Today we have Michael, we have James, and we have Debra here. So what we normally do, we normally start with like a nice little 2-minute long bio about each of you. Where have you been? Where have you come from? So I don't know who wants to start, but
Michael, take it away, James. Okay, never mind. Okay, I'll start. I'm actually a first AD. I've worked as a first AD now on student films for the past 2 years. The reason I became a first AD was because I was sick of sets and student films that weren't moving or going quick enough, and we were wasting time and money, so I became a first AD. So I've had experience with a lot of producers over the past 2 years, and I don't mind sharing that experience with people to learn and grow from,
Nice, awesome. That was nice and short. Wow, I think that's the first person who's actually done a short bio, so good job.
Isn't it? Normally he likes it very much about himself.
Well,
James, do you want to go next?
Right. So, similar to Mike, I first started out producing on student films. My first one was in first year, so I'm approaching my third year of doing that. But yeah, so I've been a producer for going on about 3 years now. I've been freelance for going on a year. I sort of fell in love with producing. Just because I like organizing. I'm not so much into the technical side. I'm more into the business side. I'm not so much in front of being in front of the camera, because of course, I mean, my face is on this, but I have a face for radio. It's great. No, but yeah, in general, I am experienced as a producer on student films, a few outside independent projects, usually working with students, and I'm also experienced working with clients and doing projects with slightly larger budgets than we're used to with our student films via my production company entity, which turned 1 back in February. But yeah, it's a bit about myself.
Awesome. How have you been finding freelancing? We actually spoke on the podcast yesterday, which is not out yet, so spoilers, guys. We were talking about freelancing. I mean, how have you been finding the freelancing world as a sort of more, rather than being someone who's doing necessarily the creative aspect of the film? How have you found it doing the managerial business side?
When we actually have clients coming in and we've got time to focus on their work, it's been fine. It's been rather enjoyable to be taken seriously as a professional and not seen as just another student working. It's one of the things. I think it's one of the things I quite prefer about being a producer and carrying yourself as a filmmaker is if you have an outward exterior that's professional, clients and other filmmakers take you equally as seriously. I will preface that by saying, although I am on a producer's podcast and wear the badge of producer, I am very aware that I am merely, at the moment, in my professional sense, a runner/production assistant. I think I can wear the badge of producer because I've been paid to produce with my own company independent work, but I don't think I couldn't call myself a film producer just yet.
Fair enough. I mean, that makes sense, and it's nice that you're honest about it as well, and not just like, oh yeah, I'm a producer, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't let the waistcoat fool you.
And we'll move on lastly to Debra. Do you want to do a quick little bio about yourself?
Yes, of course I can do. Whether I can be quick or not is another story. So I am a producer. I started off in radio, actually, as a radio journalist way back, and moved from that into local news because I had a journalistic background. But a journalistic background helps hugely when you want to make documentaries, which is what I then moved into. Although I did do some films, some dramas along the way, but as a assistant producer. So I've worked my way up from being a researcher to an assistant producer to a producer. This is in documentary terms, to a series producer and then an executive producer. There you go. I can tell you some of the programs. I had to actually look up my CV to remember some of the stuff I've worked on, to be frank, which is possibly a sign of age, or that I've just done so much at,
Yeah, it's the latter.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So, I mean, I've done all sorts of things. I've In fact, my CV goes back to just I'm just looking at it here, 1997, but patently I've worked in Britain. I came from New Zealand since 1980 in radio and stuff. I did work on, I was reminded of a program I worked on called In Suspicious Circumstances by Edward Woodward, who was an actor. And I looked back actually on YouTube, and it's the most fantastic series. I'm probably going off on one here, so guys, please stop me. But Edward Woodward would present these stories from way back in time, so Victorian times. So as a researcher on it, my job and others was to go back into the annals of history and back into old court reports that were made of crimes in the 17 and 1800s. And then they were dramatised. Yeah, I'll kind of move on from that. Anyway, so there was In Suspicious Circumstances that I worked on, but it's kind of sublime to the ridiculous. I also produced Religion for ITV, and I was also an executive producer of the Jeremy Kyle show. So I've done studio stuff, I've done drama, I've done documentaries. I'll stop there because I'll bore you rigid otherwise. But yeah.
So with I guess a good way to start this is, for these two who are getting into being producers, first AD, whatever, sort of going down that route, what's the progression really that they should be looking towards, or anyone who's wanting to be a producer on anything, like where should they be going, like what path should they try and take, or
Oh God. You're asking me for advice on this, but I would just say take every single opportunity that comes your way, no matter what it is. I mean, you're running your own companies, some of you, and you are therefore CEO, producer, director, probably researcher, probably writer as well. So you're doing all those things. To work in the world of industry, you need proof that you can do jobs. And I suppose one of the important things is to think about really what area you really enjoy. If you go in to a company saying, I'll do anything, which is probably what you'd be feeling, but I'll do anything you want me to do, I can do anything, they're going to go, well, what is your area of interest? So I think probably if you go and see people say, I love script writing, I love telling a story, I like changing it, I like the fact that you have 15 different drafts of a script that you're writing, then that is the area you should be concentrating on, trying to get into, and maybe starting off as as an assistant to a script writer, knowing the stories, that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with going in as a runner. That's a jolly good job, because you get to find out what everybody does across the board and how they all operate, and you also get to find out the people in a team who you like and who are going to connect with you, I guess. I suppose my advice initially would be to be specific about the areas of interest that you've got, be it cinematography, be it directing, be it camera operating, be it script writing, and to kind of try and move in on that path and be really determined on that path. Not everybody has an idea about what they want to be, you like the breadth of it. Short of that, I think it's making contacts with people, it's watching drama, it's emailing, having a look at the credits, emailing the people that connect with the areas that you're interested in, emailing them and going, wow, I really love that. I'm a student, I'm new to the industry. Can I buy you a coffee? That's where it starts. Don't know if that's helpful or not, but it's hard.
Definitely helpful.
Definitely
helpful. It's one of those things where it always seems that, it's who you know kind of thing. And it is that, it's such a overused phrase, but I do feel like the more I'm starting to trying to get into the film industry and stuff, that's more that what I'm finding is the case. And I sort of understand that a little bit better, that it is a lot of it is who you know and sort of networking with those people. Yeah.
And believe me, when I say that if somebody turns up one day to come and work on a team, and that person is affable, they're nice, they're interested, they're keen, then that person will get more work. It's as simple as that. A lot, you assume that when people come in and they apply for a job and they want to do something, they've got some experience and some history, and they'll be able to do the job that that they're being asked to do. But if you make an impact just by being nice and by being you, then that is worth so much when you make an impression on a person who can make a difference to your career. Probably the production manager, probably the producer. We all think that we should aim high in those that we want to make contact with, but you know what? Actually, there are people who work, the people who manage the runners. That's somebody that you need to make an impression on. The person who's head of cameras, just by asking questions and not being too obnoxious, but asking questions, being interested, being there, hovering, willing to stay for an 18-hour shift, which is what it would be like in industry. You make an impression and you're a nice person, then that counts for a huge amount.
So I just want to ask the two gents, have you had sort of contacts with, or meetups with people from the industry already? Have you sort of met people in this way,
Yes.
coffee meeting type way? Do you want to give us like a rundown of sort of how it went? Like what sort of, maybe like, I don't know, just what it was like really for you on a sort of personal level?
Mike, do you want to go first, or?
So I've not had a sit-down coffee shop meeting with somebody before. However, I worked with a set team in university, Will Fry, Stephen Jones, Chris Bird, those lovely lot. And Stephen is based in Wales, and he knows a company called Aerial Works, and they're a drone company who make the exterior drone shots for a lot of TV dramas, news, that kind of thing. And they came to do a shoot in Media City, and Stephen recommended all three of us, and we worked on that for the day. It was a documentary about Misguided in Media City in their headquarters. So we were spotters for the day, which is kind of like a runner. It's a lot of crowd control, using a radio, that kind of thing. And we spoke with, I think it's Stephanie, and I'm not sure the other gent's name, all day about what work they've done. And it was more a friendly conversation. If you present yourself as someone who's enthusiastic and eager to learn about what they've done, they're more than likely to hire you again. I found out they actually did work in Southport and Merseyside, so I recommended myself because I'm based here to give me more jobs there. But again, it's just being positive, being friendly, not being shy, trying to put yourself out there, and it goes a long way,
Yeah, I agree with that. I've got 2 or 3 stories. The first one was one of the stories. I'll start with my biggest failure and biggest risk. So as we know, Simon Maloney, the first AD turned producer who's worked on Peaky Blinders, came into the university to give a talk. As most people do with these talks, at the end he got swarmed and asked, "Hey, can I get your email?" I said, "Hey, Simon, I know you've been asked this a lot, blah blah blah. Could I get your email?" And he said, "If you can find it." I went off on a journey, couldn't find his email, but I did find that he has a company registered to an address, and I wrote a letter to that address going, "Hey, couldn't find your email, did this." Thankfully, I think at this point, I'm glad I've not heard back. So my advice would be, obviously, I worded it properly. I had a good letter that was, "I hope this is a show of my initiative and how good I am at researching, blah, blah, blah," and all that jazz. Don't do that. The more successful research, methods I've got in contacting people is, like Debra said, contacting people via email and asking for that coffee. I had one instance where I met with a production manager off Brassic and went for a coffee with her and just had a conversation. Another instance where I found out that a family member of mine was in industry and just met with them. That was quite more in line with the more nepotism end of filmmaking, going in with a family member, just meeting with them, having a sit down. And then another one was happen chance. I was at the Cannes Film Festival, and a friend of a friend had managed to get a coffee meeting with a producer of a film on Netflix called Redcon 1. Great film, you should check it out. The producer's called Chi Kyung Chung, and I tagged along to her coffee meeting, and the producer said, "If you want someone to mentor you, I can." He's been very busy recently because Redcon sort of blew up and he got into Netflix and whatnot. But yeah, so coffee meetings like that are definitely great. And then there's Jules McCarthy at the university who runs some amazing sessions on basically building your profile as a runner and applicant, marking your CV, and she talks you through how to carry yourself in these coffee situations. So I recommend those highly.
Awesome. So it's sort of, oh man, I just had a question, but it's like sort of slipped away really quickly.
I've got a question, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So James and Mike, just think about how it's interesting that you're talking as third years. Think about what it was like when you first came in. So in your first year, what are the differences in your approach to people, in your confidence, in what you think you've got to talk about,
Well,
that kind of thing. I mean, how has that changed?
So initially, I think I'm not sure if this was the second or third year, but I can't remember which lecturer organised it. But the director of The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas came. I've lost his name, but initially I didn't come prepared. I didn't research him. I didn't think of what questions to ask. I was very shy, and I think I lost an opportunity there to kind of, I guess, learn a contact or get kind of more, I don't know, for him to push me in the right direction. So I think for first and second years who are listening, the main thing you want to do is your research. Prepare questions you want to ask. I mean, it sounds silly, but if you don't, you shot yourself in the foot. Prepare questions that you want to ask them that would not only benefit you, but also get them to talk about themselves. At the end of the day, everyone loves talking about themselves. And the more friendly you come across towards them, the more likely they are to give you their phone number, email, or give you other contacts. So prepare, key thing, and don't be afraid to push the boat out. A lot of people are shy, and I find that from working on sets the past 2 years with other groups in the uni, you become more confident, being more, openly, what's the word? A better public speaker. And from that kind of skill you learn working on sets, you can get better at talking to people if you are shy or that kind of thing, Am I on the right tracks, James? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just googled it. It's Mark Herman was the director.
Oh yeah.
Another example, prime one. Mike was there for this one. During the incredible what was it called? The film festival set up by Laura for our degree. It was incredible.
Oh, the FOSF.
What, festival short film?
Yes, festival short film. It was incredible, and we got some amazing speakers, and one of the most notable ones that Mike and I both sort of cornered and had like an amazing hour-long conversation, consuming amazing amounts of cheese and wine.
Yeah.
Is Stephen Gallagher. He was an incredible speaker, incredibly friendly, and he was incredible. I would love to get his contact details, but it very much felt like it was better just to forge in that time. Because going off the back of what Mike says, been pushing the boat out, it's also important to read the person that you're across. And if they want to just have a conversation and you can talk about something they're passionate about and talk to them and try and start forging that bond, maybe the next time you see them, you can get their contact details and try and go for that coffee. But at least the first time, focus on making that first good impression. That's what I'd definitely say. Yeah, and like Mike says, do your research. If I think back to first year, I didn't have... prior to this degree, I had no background in film whatsoever. My A-levels were lit lang drama, and I hadn't picked up a camera. And yet a lot of it is definitely do your research and don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, Mike and I are probably quite vocal in our year. I know I have been since day one. And I think it's definitely paid off in terms of the rate at which you can learn things by just asking questions. And it is important to know when to listen and when to talk. I talk a lot, and it's something I definitely do struggle with and have had to learn to do. And on that note...
So,
Can I say something that in my life, I have, with documentary, you've got to, it's different to drama, and documentary is my forte. But production, I think, is much the same on wherever you're coming from, whichever genre. That I have always just felt, it's my mantra, that nobody's interested in what I've got to say, but I need to be and am really interested in what other people have got to say. So if you're going to go, if you've got a guest coming into the classes, really, you need to read up about them beforehand. Don't wait for them to tell you and then discover on the day. Yeah. Know who they are, what they've made, where they're from, what they think about, toilet paper, I don't know. Find out about stuff. And then you're right to have some questions. It's basically who, what, where, when, why. But you can't just say, well, who are you, why are you, when were you? You need to know about their background so that you can let them know that you are so interested in them, that you've done the research and the groundwork as well. Is what I would say.
Yeah.
There's so much more I could say, but you're right. I also talk too much. So.
So you guys, as sort of producers, first ADs, how do you go about sort of preparing like a show reel or something that you can, you've met this person, this famous producer or whatever, they're like, so how can you show them what you have done without just going, oh well, I've worked on this, this, and this? Is that what you would do, or like I don't know. I don't know.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I won't lie to you. I know all the first ADs in the year who cry every time when they see a DOP show reel. It's all well and good having a lovely fancy camera show reel, but there's nothing to kind of execute the producer or first AD role. Where I combat that is if you've choreographed or scheduled an amazing action piece that's very tricky to do, and you show someone that I organised this, they're going to love you for it. Where if it's just two people sat at a desk, they're going to be quite bored. You've got to look for your darling scenes, I suppose.
I like that term.
Thanks. I stole that from Nigel. But so it's got to be something a bit more complicated and tricky and hard to either produce or kind of schedule. So there's the producer for No Refunds, my graduate film directed by Chesden. There are nudity scenes in it, which was a hell of a lot of an issue to schedule and organise and produce. I know Stefan and Stacey, both producers, have been going through hoops with Jane, our exec producer, about the kind of the intimate coordination with that scene, and I'm sure that they'll use that scene in the future to show potential employers that, I organised this safely.
May I add a plug in there quickly?
Yeah, thanks.
I'll just do a plug in there for Ita O'Brien. This the research that Jane So Jane took a few students down to the London Short Film Festival. We went to a lovely talk hosted by Ita O'Brien, who is an intimacy coordinator and has been our main point of call, I think, for the university. And I know Jane's definitely tried to implement it with our productions. I think No Refunds is a fantastic example of that being used safely.
Thanks. But yeah, going back to the question, it's more to produce a show reel for first AD or producer, make sure you write the credits on the clip that you're using at a base level anyway. It doesn't have to flow smoothly, in my opinion, as long as it can visually be told in a short 1 minute, 1 minute 30 kind of section. I did this in this scene, and it's a bit more complicated and shows your skill. Obviously, you can't just shove on call sheets or schedules, that kind of thing. It's got to be a bit visual,
Yeah, it's a visual medium after all. I agree, yeah. My current show reel is always something it's always involved some asset or logistical element that is a little bit out of the norm. That's, it's not just a two shot on OTS back and forth, people talking. It's something like maybe a location that's quite interesting that was difficult to get, or it's a camera movement that needed specialized equipment. It's always something that I can go, and here's what I did that is industry practice, but I implemented at this level that demonstrates that I'm aiming that high. I plug Man at Arms there with our pyrotechnic, because those things are not your every day. Something I've had to work with every day on student film.
It's surprised you guys even got those for your film. I'm surprised you even managed to. I don't know how the hell you managed to acquire someone to do explosives for you guys, but
you paid them.
Yeah, well, props to you for doing it. But yeah, I remember seeing some BTS stuff on Instagram. So good job, guys.
Thank you very much.
More than just paying them, though, too, is kind of having the contact because you pay them industry rates. So, you convince those people that your idea was great and that you were professional in your approach to it all as well, that you weren't going to rely on them to do all the professional stuff, that you were going to do it. Let me just say also about show reels and CVs. Imagine an executive producer sitting at their desk. They must get, 100 emails a day of people wanting to work with them and wanting to have a coffee conversation. So when somebody's looking at your show reel, they need to see within 5 seconds who you are, what you've done, and why you do it, and your passion. So there's a cover letter that's the most important thing to make the impression. And then when they look, and then they'll go straight online and have a look at your show reel. And if it stands out and if it's clear what you're responsible for within the stuff that they're looking at, then they'll go, yeah, okay, that looks interesting. If they have to search and they don't know what they're looking for and what's this footage, who's this, what's this footage, what have they done in this way, they're going to go, do you know what, can't be asked. And they'll spike it. It'll be gone because they haven't got time. Clarity is incredibly important. And and communication, and succinct communication as well, not great big screeds of writing in your cover letter, I would say.
Awesome. I don't know if you guys want to, if you have anything more you want to say about this in particular, but we can move on to some Instagram questions if you like.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
I've got a little Steven Spielberg quote, which
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to
Yeah,
share.
yeah.
Filmmaking is all about appreciating the talents of the people you surround yourself with and knowing you could never have made any of these films by yourself. And that's from Steven
Exactly.
Spielberg. I like that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a collaborative medium.
It's true. I'm still trying to work with Mike. We'll get there.
He wishes he could work with me, right?
I do.
So yeah, one of the questions we had on Instagram was as producers, what attracts you guys to certain projects, but more so than another one? Where's really the where do you get your what makes you want to get on the project?
I can't talk for producer myself. I can talk for Stacey and Stephanie and the producers of No Refunds. I think Stacey was drawn to Chesden's script mainly because it was ambitious. I think Stefan joined, well, mainly because Will was on it, but I think, again, yeah, but that comes down to other people you've worked on. So if you're a producer and you're confident that you know X, Y, and Z can produce a good film, you're going to go work with them. It does come with previous experience. But again, if the script's interesting, if it's feasible and logistical, that's a big issue that needs to be sorted out and kind of thought about. Obviously, James, you can talk about all your amazing action pieces.
Yes. In terms of what attracts me as a producer to a project, Man at Arms is a different kettle of fish because I assembled that. I had the resource, and then I said, I've got the resource. I worked with the owner of the tank to come up with the base concept, and then I started to assemble my team of filmmakers who I knew could complete this project could complete it to a high enough quality that I needed it to. Now, to focus on strictly the idea itself and why I wanted to use this asset, let's say for a student film and not push for a feature film outside. For starters, a feature film, this would be much better. Man at Arms, or at least the concept of having a tank, pyrotechnics, and all these high-end things would work much better as a feature film because I'm going to pull out a quote from Kevin Feige here, but he says, from a financial perspective, you have to think about what the film will generate in revenue so you can create a budget against it. Now, very good quote. And then this might not be a known fact, but unless you have billable talent and billable filmmakers making and starring in your short films, they are not for profit. And at the end of the day, filmmaking is a business. But looking at Man at Arms, and it's got these pyrotechnics, it's got the Netflix approved equipment that we're using. I've got a crew who I trust to make it to a high standard, and we have a tank and spectacle. This now becomes, or at least became to me, a project about not trying to make a profit, but trying to establish myself and my team. And I mean, we're a bit of a family by the end of it because some harsh shoot dates, but to establish ourselves as competent filmmakers who can operate at that high level. So I think in university, what attracts me to projects is establishing yourself as a competent filmmaker with something that not everyone else is doing. I mean, in the early days, I was in talks with Chesden about No Refunds, and that was a really exciting project for the reasons Mike stated. It's a really exciting project. It's ambitious, and the idea itself, it's very well written. Because I mean, if you've seen Chesden's work and you've read his scripts, they're very good. And it was a real toss-up between the two projects in the early days. And I definitely think, yeah, a good idea, and then trying to weigh the benefit of the project for like the time you're going to give to it and your own professional development. That's how I look at it. But of course, the story has to be good. If the story is not good, stay away with the 10-foot pole. Doesn't matter what your budget is. Doesn't matter what art assets you have to manage that are impressive. If the story is not good, stay away.
The story might also not be good in your mind, because that's a kind of a subjective view, isn't it? That when you say good, it might not be attractive to you, but others might actually find that story a challenge as well.
Yeah.
Me, through my career, I have pretty much 90% of the time taken on new projects. And so, you know, when you're working in the industry, film is very different because each project is completely unique, isn't it? It's a single, you know, unique thing. Whereas from my point of view, I've worked on series of programs, and so you've got to set it up. It's got to be a success in order for it to be recommissioned. And so for me, I have always liked a challenge and something new. And if you're thinking about a series that's going to be on TV, you've got to be thinking about the graphics, you've got to be thinking about the music, you've got to be thinking about the presenter, you've got to be thinking about the format of it. How is that going to work? The scripting. So as a producer, you're responsible for all of those things. And so for me, like a challenge, but I also would be attracted to a project if I could trust the team that was going to be working with me as well. That's the most important. That is the most important thing, because it's long hours, it's long days, it's very stressful, particularly when you're taking an idea to somebody who can say, an executive producer or a commissioner is going to say, nah, I know we agreed on doing this, but actually I want that now. So you've got to go out and do more filming or use what you've done in order to change. You're constantly feeding the client in a way, really. And it would be the same. Well, actually, I think it's different for you as you move into industry if you're going to be individual filmmakers, because you have a passion about the project that you are working on and you're prepared to kind of be on the breadline throughout in a way. Because I don't see where I might be completely wrong here. I mean, you're going to have to fundraise for this, bring in the money that will sustain you as individuals.
Yes.
Hard work. And there's a difference between what you are aiming to do, what your ambitions are, and working on something like Peaky Blinders, which is a recurring. And once you get into that, the team, everyone works together. So there are two very different, at least two, if not three. You've got soaps as well, where you're making your individual projects and the stress is immense. And then the other stress is getting into TV or Netflix or whatever it is. It's TV, we call it that as a generic phrase for it. And where you are going to be part of a team that just keeps recurring and you're just producing and you are working for somebody else probably initially. You won't be the producer of a Netflix original. Hey,
imagine.
I hope you all are.
So do I.
That, but it doesn't happen immediately. And so all of your projects that you're making are building your ladder up to being Netflix, if that's what you want to be doing. Proving to yourself and using what you have made to prove to other people that you are really good at what you want to do and you have passion.
That's awesome. It's like, and that sort of raises another question of where do you two, the lads in particular, want to be in like 5 years? Like the classic question, where do you want to be in 5 years? What's sort of your goal after university?
Honestly, sorry? Oh, good question. You're right. Yeah. Honestly, 5 years time, I'd love to be working as one of the runners on Doctor Who. I think at a base level, a runner is a fantastic ladder, kind of springboard to step from. It can lead to any department really. So become a runner, And if I'm in 5 years time, even if I'm still a runner, it's work and I can move on from it. But yeah, Doctor Who's the dream,
Yeah, similarly the same. I'd like to be a production assistant. I'd like to be a production assistant in high-end dramas like television. But if I'd take that, or I'd like to be working in a production office. I'm not overtly fond of being on set. I have to be because I'm the problem solver, but not fond of it. It's stressful. I've lost my hair as it is.
My recommendation would be that you had done the production coordinator role. I mean, you like filming and you like being out doing that. Production coordinator into production manager, there is a dearth of those in the industry, of people who can manage the teams and who do have the solutions at their fingertips and know what to do to solve a problem. And there's an MA at Salford that you could do.
Hey.
We'll see.
Nice.
Good segue.
So I guess we can go on that was a cool little bit. We can move on to some other Instagram questions. One, I don't know whether these are separate things or because I don't understand any of these terms.
Okay.
So maybe you guys will. There's three things. So the first one is SEIS tax relief.
Is this from Lee by any chance?
It is from Lee. How did you know?
Hi, Lee. Because Lee and I are currently researching that. So SEIS tax relief I'm not sure if I've not looked into that. I've only looked in. Lee knows this, so I'll answer it for the broader questions, the broader audience even. I've looked into the film tax refund (FTR). Now that is when the government will reimburse you a certain percentage of your tax for making a film and having UK spending. There's a whole harem of things there. You've got to qualify as a UK film, usually by passing the UK cultural test. It's on the BFI. It's very, very easy to pass. It sort of proves Stephen Murphy's point that the film industry in the UK doesn't, there is no UK film industry, because even if you look at the BFI statistical yearbook, they're all UK/USA, UK/France productions. But back onto what that is. The film tax refund does not apply to us as short filmmakers. It only really applies to feature films which turn a profit. When you turn a profit, you then will submit your books and your what is VAT classified to the government, and they will reimburse you a sum of what they're taxing you on your profit. So you must first turn a profit, and let's say you had a project around about £40,000, and then you made about £25,000. They would normally tax you about £7,000, but with a film tax refund, they would only tax you £1,000. But this is all going through the very long process of hoping. Well, you have to make profit first. They're not just going to give you money for spending it. That's otherwise everyone would do it. Everyone would be a filmmaker, and it would be an amazing vehicle for money laundering. Going forward into SEIS investment, it's something I'm very much looking into now. Similar thing, little known fact, by the way, for short films and features, we're supposed to limit liability of, let's say your production collapses and promises you've got made, you're supposed to incorporate your film as a limited company and conduct all business of your film through that company. Now, what you can do with SEIS investment, which is, again, I've yet to get to that part of my research about SEIS tax relief, but with investment, you would effectively offer up shares of your company to investors at a set price. So let's say you could offer 40% of your company to investors and have each share worth £1,000. Therefore, if your project was worth 40 grand, an investor could purchase 1% of shares, have that much stake in the company, and give you £1,000, get 40 investors at £1,000. And then once your project turns a profit, they would be entitled to a percentage of your profits after you've recouped production cost and whatnot. But that's a lot. Sorry to prattle on.
Okay, so for me, I don't understand it, but I hope someone out there who's listening and who's interested in production understands some of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I'll also say, if any of my information is incorrect, please forgive me. I don't think it is, but if it is, please inform me and please teach me. Because as I said, very much still learning, very much still a student.
So I was going to say, sorry, Charles, to interrupt, but there's some good information on crowdcube.com about it. But you're right, no one is going to give money away unless they're going to get money back. So the risks of this are that if you've got investors who are interested in your project, they won't invest unless they know that you're going to sell it and that they're going to get some return on their investment.
Yes, ROI, as they would say, on those many pesky forms.
Yes, exactly.
It's not necessarily for everyone, but there is I guess it's like a necessary evil towards making film and making money through this sort of business.
It is. It's definitely something I don't know a hell of a lot about yet, but I am getting there. But yeah, it sort of goes back to, I've got a very lengthy quote from Robert Zemeckis that I was trying to throw in, but this definitely works. It says, I think the only thing that filmmakers can do is to try to make good movies and make them as long as they allow us to keep making them. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and if audiences don't want to see the films, there's nothing we can do about it. It'll just go away, I guess. So yeah, it's the same thing. Linking with what I quote from Feige, before you do any of this, you've got to make sure there's an audience for your film, and you've got to do your market research. And 100%. A good thing for that is Stephen Murphy's marketing and distribution and exhibition module. It's very informative and has definitely helped a lot.
Awesome. Yeah. There's one last one on here, which was making a pitch deck. I don't know if anyone knows anything about that wants to.
It's me again. Mike, do you want to take it? Do you know anything about pitch decks?
I had to make one last year for producing directing module. So if I remember correctly, a pitch deck is kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. You would pitch to potential investors, board of investors, executive producers, that kind of thing. And it's supposed to prove to them you're confident about what story you're making, how you're going to make it, and it can visually tell your story. It's quite a tricky one to explain, really, to be honest. The main part I take away from it is visual, but informative at the same time.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I'll try and be succinct on top of Mike's point. When you're doing your pitch decks, the average length I've seen, especially, let's say looking at an investment pitch deck, like when I'm working with clients through my company, we do pitch decks on the ideas to even get them on board, but they're very similar. Usually about 12 to 15 slides in length, including everything from the concept, the team behind it, examples of what your idea is, similar, like include the best of your market research, what comparable films your film could be compared to in terms of theme and content, how well those films performed in the box office, what their budgets were, what your budget is, and then include your demographic. You must know your audience. So if you've done your market research, you can put in is this. For instance, Man at Arms is aimed at it's a short film, so it doesn't really apply for profit or anything like that. But Man at Arms is aimed at a specific 10.4% of the British population, which is white British males between the ages of 16 and 24 and 45 to 55. And that's because it has elements of children clinging onto their youth and it's sort of a coming of age for the character, but it also has these action attractive elements and nostalgia of a scorpion tank, which for the age demographic of 45-55, when they were kids, Palatoy, the company behind Action Man, that was the hot toy when they were kids, was a scorpion tank Action Man and Action Man figurine.
Well, you've done your research.
Of course.
But yes.
I would say if you think about Dragon's Den, when they come up through the lift and they're faced by those 5 dragons, they have to, within a very short space of time, convince them to invest money. And that's kind of what you're talking about here, except you'd be doing it with a PowerPoint. You might have shot an opening scene. You might have some photographs of locations that you were going to do. You'd have examples of the script. You'd probably have the first, 15 minutes, possibly 10 minutes of your film, but you'd certainly have the whole story of it. But essentially, you've got to go in and say and convince them that your project is going to be professionally executed, that you've got a good team on board who have experience, and here's links to all of the work that they've done as well, if that's what they want. You might already have chosen your actors, so you'll have all of the profiles of the actors and the characters, and you're kind of ready to go. There's a lot of work that goes into that before you actually go and see these people for the money. You know what it is you're going to make, you know when you can make it, how you're going to make it, with what equipment, with what support, with what actors, with what characters. And so you're kind of poised, ready to go. And there's a huge amount of work that goes in before that. A lot of this will have to be self-financing, I suppose, or you're going to have people, initially, in order to create this thing that you're then going to take in order to get the big money. But if you think Dragon's Den and how they present themselves, that is exactly what you're talking about with your pitch deck. And you can answer any questions about your project, any questions at all. You know it inside out and back the other way again.
Yeah. Awesome. So I guess this kind of sort of segues onto, so what skills does a successful producer or first AD need to be really successful within this sort of industry?
On a broader sense of the industry, I could only speculate. If we treat the confines of the University of Salford as my immediate area of expertise, because that's where I can call myself a producer until graduation. In that sense, I think it helps to be quite diplomatic. You've got to be able to bring together many different kinds of people who have very different workflows. You have to be personable. The more people you make friends with and the more people that you're just open with, and don't treat them as colleagues, don't treat them as business partners, don't treat them as just a crew. Treat them as your friends and your family. Try and get it's a natural thing when you're working with people a long time. But my best friends on the course are people I work with not every day now, but every day. And even people outside of our course, the Lee Preston, who's posted that comment, he's branched out into the Manchester filmmaking bubble, and he's friends with people outside of that, and he's also a producer. So definitely being friendly and being open is the most rewarding asset, I think, in being personable. Because the more people you're friends with, the more things they give you for free, or more likely to help you out or pitch in and help give you ideas. I'd also say, of course, the main ones are budgeting, scheduling, people management, resourcefulness, mindfulness. It's all the basic. What would you put on your LinkedIn profile or in your skill section of your CV? It definitely just helps to keep asking questions, keep pushing yourself, and just do your research. Research on what the films you want to make, the films you're making, filmmakers, and people around you who are climbing that ladder in industry, and just go, hey, how have you done it? How have you done it? Could you teach me? Could you show me? And I think definitely the confines of the university, that's the best advice I could give. Outside of that, it very much just seems to be level-headed. Use your vision and look towards the future. It's not a soothsayer. The market research won't tell you everything, but have a good idea of what's going on. My biggest pitfall has been not looking at, let's say, like watching the Oscars and looking at which short films have been winning for the past 5 years, and not keeping up with current trends. For instance, I paid for a few sessions with a development producer called Juliette. Her sessions are incredibly informative. I checked them out. And she mentioned that I should watch Parasite months before Parasite was even on the radar for an Oscar nomination. So it's that sort of thing of try and talk to people who are in the know, because it's the age-old saying, knowledge is power.
Again, university confines is what I can really speak about in my role as a first AD. If I would give advice to upcoming first ADs who are currently in the role in first, second year, is be professional. At the end of the day, if you go to a set and you see all your crew are on their phones or not doing jobs, that's an issue there. It sounds silly, but take everyone's phones off them. The only people with phones should be a first AD, producer, or director. If you see someone sitting about, there's always a job to do. There's always packing down that can be done, setting up to be done. It's being confident and friendly, and separating yourself from trying to fit in and trying to get the job done. A lot of people hide behind the fact of, if I shout at them, they're not going to like me anymore, but it needs to be done, and it's understanding that. And make a good call sheet, and no one will turn up on set at the wrong time, It's easy as that.
I think another thing to add is, and this definitely applies to university level, because it's the same reason why in industry you start out as a runner and work your way up, and it's the same reason why outside of industry it works. Don't just assume because you're a producer you don't have to help. Don't be that person who walks onto set and goes, well, I'm the producer, that's not my job, or I'm the director, that's not my job. Especially at our level, everyone helps move kit, everyone helps set up, everyone helps pack down, and no one just nips off set for a snack or something when the call sheet says lunch is here till here. No one leaves because they're not. No one's sitting idle. For instance, on my times, I may have been the producer of that project, but I was running up and down a quarry, and at one point whilst people were setting up, I had to run across the quarry carrying a full human-sized dummy on my shoulders because it had to be transported from A to B. It's just part of the job. It's a learning experience, because another key part of being a producer is how can you tell people what to do if you don't understand what their role entails.
Yeah, perfectly.
I would say there's also a danger of getting too involved. I'm always somebody that will get my hands dirty with a team and help out. But actually, as a producer, don't forget the buck stops with you. The buck stops with you. So you need an absolute overview of what everybody else is doing. There's nothing wrong with lugging gear around and helping out. But actually, you need to almost, if you watch 24 Hours in A&E, the registrar stands back. Have you seen? Everybody else is doing the work. Everybody else, it are saying, have you done this? What's the medication? Check their legs, do this. And they're watching the whole thing operating in front of them. So don't forget the producer. I would absolutely not say is in an elevated position, because I think in a team, everybody is equal. Without members of the team being there, sound's not there, you can't make your project. Camera's not there. So everybody is equal as you come together. But as a producer, you must, and as a first AD as well, so a producer has the overview of everything. The first AD is looking up to the producer and the director, is looking left to the producer and the director, and looking right to the rest of the team. And you can have as many as 50 people on a set when you're filming. And so everybody has to be working together and knowing what everybody else is doing. So I have a list. I actually have a Prezi, which when I was lecturing about what a producer does in both docs and drama. But I have a list here, which I will rattle off. You've all kind of gone through anyway. The important things, this is the second part of my list actually. Negotiation, flexibility, respect and sensitivity, organisation, multitasking, attention to detail, plus that big overview, problem solving and removing obstacles, risk taking, thinking about the risk that you're going to take to make something succeed, stress management and keeping composure. That's an incredibly important thing. There will always be moments of stress. Everyone will then look to the producer. What's going on? What are we doing? The producer might be feeling like a turmoil inside, but actually your face will say, guys, everything's going to be okay. I have a little saying, which I always say, is that there is always a solution to every problem. Every problem has a solution. You've just got to get there. And self-criticism is also important, being able to kind of not rise above everybody else and just going to go, no, guys, actually, you've told me something here. Cool. I'm going to think about that. We're going to make this work, no matter what comes at you, because you cannot have personalities clashing. Well, you can, but you've got to bring people back together.
Can manage it.
Kind of the job of a producer. Very important.
I think especially keeping composure is definitely one that we face with Man at Arms. I won't go into it too much, but everything that could go wrong did. And it coined a very nice saying of, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade and hope it's not piss. Because because lots of things went wrong. And as you were saying, you can have up to 50 people on a set. We had at most around about that on Man at Arms, including cast, crew and extras. And it was very important that I knew at certain points, if I cracked, that would be the end of production, because people would look to me to go, can we still do this? And a bit of a teaser on one of the problems is we had such a problematic first day at the quarry that we ended up cancelling our second day shoot to completely re-strategize the entire thing. It was a fantastic learning experience, and I'm very, very thankful that it's happened at university with the protection of it being, I hate saying it, a student film, rather than being out in the world of an independent film and these problems happening and being the stakes being a lot higher than our very small budget because due to the buffer of university equipment.
That is such an important thing. If we've got any first and second years listening to this, and I'm assuming we will, that university is a place to make mistakes, you know, to experiment. And, you know, that if I was marking a project that had really, really endeavoured to try something experimental or something different, or he'd gone to a quarry and had used tanks or used explosives or whatever it was, and somebody had really tried to create something that they believed in, and it had failed, the marks wouldn't be failure marks. The marks would, you know, so long as people could recognise what they'd learned from it, so long as, you know, when you write your reflections, but that's a place to do it. You know, that is absolutely the place to experiment and to try things out. So the more of that happens, I would say, the better, really.
Yeah. Before we move on, one big thing that I found, and the biggest learning experience I had from my most recent film, is on set, whenever there was any problem, because it was almost always, as it often is, a shoot ending problem. The director, producer, first AD, and DOP, we all met together, and usually within about 5-10 minutes, we would have a solution ready to go to continue the shoot and solve whichever problem it was. It worked. I think it works incredibly to have that level of communication. That's another skill as a producer. You definitely need communication. We had a moment where something had taken a lot longer than it was supposed to, and at different levels of different problems, one of us would be the one at the end of their tether. This time it was me, and I was like, I don't care what it takes. We need to move on from this because we have more things to shoot. And then the other three taught me down and said, well, no, here are all the reasons why we shouldn't do that. And I was like, to be fair, they're very good reasons. And it's all about monitoring yourselves. And as Debra said, being self-aware.
It could be something quite small. I was shooting a drama, working on a drama, where everyone was ready to go. Everyone had gone through. They'd done a rehearsal, they'd done a recording, everything was going. That was the scene, lockdown. Hang on just a second. What is that in the middle of the table? So you'll remember that I mentioned that I worked on reenactments of crimes from the Victorian times. So it was a kitchen scene, somebody was being poisoned. In the middle of the table was a loaf of bread. Everything was cut. Everybody was stood down for 20 minutes while I had to go to Sainsbury's and buy a wholemeal loaf of bread because somebody had bought in for the scene a loaf of white bread. Well, white bread did not exist in 1862 or whenever it was. So everything was stopped. Everything was stopped. They had an early break while I rushed off to Sainsbury's and came back with the most rustic loaf of bread I possibly could find so that could replace the one that had been put in the middle of the table. Because you know then that your viewing audience needs to believe also in what you are creating as a story. And so you absolutely, the research has to be so acute, if you like, even down to the fact that, you know, white bread, milled flour did not exist in that time. And it was just brown stuff brought together. I mean, very good for your bowels, I'm sure. But that must have cost a fortune as well to have stopped it for that length, because that then pushes back against the whole day. Yeah, there we go.
Do you reckon it was worthwhile doing that, pausing production to go get a loaf of bread when you could have just taken the bread off the table and not had it?
There's a good point. I think it's centered around people eating.
Okay.
The whole scene centered around that. And they would have eaten bread. That's what they ate in those days. So I think it was an essential prop. So I'm going to say yes, because you're quite right to think that on location, when that happens, you're thinking, right, can we do away with that? Because we cannot afford the time here. And I think it was an intrinsic part to the scene. And so it had to be got. And there you go. So yeah,
fair enough. I just thought I'd throw it in there, a bit of a bombshell, but not necessarily.
Spanner in the works, eh?
Devil's advocate.
Good point. Because if it hadn't, if you'd left the white bread there, somebody watching would have now written to ITV and had complaints and would have complained about, you know, I can't believe what you're doing. You've got a piece of white bread sitting in the middle of the table, and so you have to be as accurate as you can be.
Yeah. I guess people can understand mistakes, but I do know that, you know, there is some people out there who are quite picky about what they're watching and how they're seeing it, and so you guys are basically the first and last line of defense against these sort
inaccuracies.
Of issues. And these issues arising in the first place. You know, it's down to, you know, it can be down to a piece of bread sometimes, and that's just the way this sort of job goes. I've just noticed the time. We're running up to about an hour, which is how long our podcasts normally go. We're going to do our regular segment. It's a recurring theme now, the quarantine film recommendation or TV show, or so you guys have to rack your brains a little bit here.
Okay.
Maybe think
so
of something.
I'm already ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, this is something probably people have already watched years ago, but Torchwood is back on BBC iPlayer. It's fantastic. A very adult version of Doctor Who. Fantastic storylines by Chris Chibnall. I'd give it a watch if you haven't already.
Awesome. Either of you two?
I'm going to recommend a Netflix series, French, called Call My Agent. There are 3 series, there's 18 shows, really good storylines, but an insight into the world of acting. It features very, very well-known French actors and actresses. If you're French, you'll know them all. For us, it's, you know, it's like, oh yeah, they are famous, but it's a very good storylines and gives you an insight to another aspect of the world that you're all going to be working in.
Okay. Mine, I've got a few, but the first thing I'd recommend is Scrubs. It's an amazing series, except season 9. Donald Faison and Zach Braff, 2 of the main leads from the show, have recently done a Scrubs rewatch podcast where week to week they're going through, whilst they're in lockdown, they're going through each of the shows. I'd also recommend, of course, the Netflix series You. It's phenomenal. And then for a film, you know, I'll go for a nice classic that's underrated, Disney's Treasure Planet. You know, it's just a feel-good
Oh,
film. It puts you through the motions, and it's a nice film.
Awesome. This week, I don't think I've recommended this, or it's not been recommended already. I'm going to recommend the first Back to the Future film.
10 out of 10. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's an awesome film. I love it. I don't know how inaccurate that particularly is, or what type of production, like set productions they ran into, but I can just say that I love that film. I've seen it so many times, and I will watch it again definitely at some point soon. Let's see. What was our crew saying? Lucy is recommending Orphan Black.
Oh yeah, that's a really good TV show actually. If you've not seen that,
Yeah,
it's about twins and not twins, well, clones. Yeah, clones.
Yeah.
It's about clones. Fantastic show that.
Yeah, so Orphan Black. There you go. That's another one. I don't know if the others are. Aarif is recommending 25th Hour. I've never heard.
Neither have I,
but there you go. There's one for you.
It's nice to have shows recommended that we haven't heard of, or that we haven't heard of for a very long time. It's always good to go back, isn't it, and like them. There's one I watched the other day. It was only 4 hours on Netflix again, called Unorthodox. So it was the dramatization of a true story. I'm always attracted to factual because of my documentary background, but Unorthodox from America, very good little series and easily watchable in one night.
And Jules is just shouting at me because I didn't see a message apparently. She says to watch the Fire Festival documentary on Netflix if you want to see how to not organize an event. And I think I know about this. So yeah, that's a good one to. It's relevant, I guess, almost sort of.
Yeah.
You need to watch it. A disaster unfolds before your eyes that is so horrendous. You can imagine if you were involved in the making of it, that there is no escape. You collapse with the tower as it falls. It's brilliant. Yeah. And apparently the people that made that also made, is it the Tiger King?
Wow.
Okay. Wait, was the Fire Festival the one that was on an island or something?
Yes.
And everyone was going to fly out. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I know about this.
Yeah. Another recommendation. Yeah. Another recommendation I have, or at least just to browse and see if they tickle your fancy, is the BFI Top 100 Films list. Ashamedly, I've looked at it and I've only seen maybe 10%, which is not great. But I'm in lockdown. I've got something to do.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome. Thank you guys for being such great guests this week, by the way. All very well prepared, as producers and first AD should be, which is wonderful to see. Quotes and everything ready. This is the exceptional work. Great. So yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you, James, and thank you, Debra, for joining us. And
enjoyed it.
Hopefully, we have you guys on again to maybe talk something else about what's been happening. After lockdown. Maybe,
I'd love to.
Yeah. Maybe back in the actual. University studios, but as you guys are postgrads, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Great.
So thank you everyone for listening as well. Don't forget to listen on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor FM, check the US_film production on Instagram. And yeah, I've been not doing that. So yeah, please just find us somewhere and listen. Great, US Film Production Podcast. Bye, everyone.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.